Hello and welcome to this session at BookFest Spring 2022, excuse me. I'm Kathleen Kaiser, I'm your moderator, and we're going to be talking with authors about books that break you out of your comfort zone. In other words, trying to find new things. Many people sort of just read like historical fiction or just mysteries. And sometimes it's really a good idea to break out of that comfort zone of what you know. It's very comforting. It's usually you read it really fast and it's something to get through, but maybe something a little more edgy might get your brain thinking in a different way, not going down the same routes that you always take. Maybe a different emotional roller coaster, pull out something different to make you think about. So today we have 5 authors, all from different genres that I think you will find very interesting, including poetry. And I'm going to start, I think I'll start with Ivor Davis because true crime is what your book Manson Exposed is about. The title Manson Exposed, a reporter's 50-year journey into madness and murder. And Ivar, true crime's a hot topic right now, lots of TV shows, everything. And you've been doing a lot of talking. I know I've seen you on a lot of documentaries, but tell people about the journey and how this book lasted 50 years.
Well, it's a fascinating case. It was probably one of the most infamous murders of the 20th century. And so I was in on the beginning, for whatever that's worth, meaning from day one as a foreign correspondent, I covered the uncovering of the murders, and there I was. And of course, my readership in the United Kingdom wanted as much as they can get. This was murder, this was Hollywood, this was famous people. This had all the ingredients. And as you said, Kathleen, I can't tell you so many podcasts, so many documentaries. I just heard from another guy, another famous director, who's doing yet another Manson series for Netflix. And so I am fortunate in picking subjects that never go away, never die, if you don't mind me using that expression. And the same applies, if I may say, that I've written a book about my travels with the Beatles, and the Beatles keeps coming up. So in a way, I suppose everyone listening that I am very fortunate, because when the Beatles have a birthday, when the death of John Lennon comes up, when the murder of Sharon Tate anniversary comes up, the media is always looking for a talking head. So I'm very fortunate in that point of view. And that's what's kept me busy, from Australian television to I'm doing Canadian television next week. I guess I'm in a rather remarkable position. So therefore, maybe some of you other authors are going to say it's an uphill battle to get publicity. And I know it's still an uphill battle to get publicity, even though you've got a sort of hot topic issue. So I'd be interested to hear what everybody else says, because murder and the Beatles is always an ever-present situation on our horizon. And so I guess I'm lucky from that point of view. So I think I'll pass that back to you, Kathleen, and let's hear from your other authors, please.
Well, one thing I wanted to do, this session is for readers too, for people that like to read books. Tell them one thing about the Manson book that might intrigue them to open it up.
The one thing that you might be interested to open the book up is to find out, why did Manson actually send out his minions to kill Sharon Tate, Jay Sebring, and the others? And you've heard the theme. Well, he wanted revolution was coming, helter skelter was coming. He was going to start a race riot. Charles Manson was, and then he and his underlings, and whatever you want to call them, family, were going to escape to an underground city in the desert. Okay. So the interesting thing is, I don't believe Manson actually believed himself the helter-skelter theory, which was used very successfully by the prosecution. I believe that Manson, in his warped mind, set his people out to kill, to turn the spotlight off of his pal, a guy called Bobby Beausoleil, who was sitting in jail for another murder not connected to Sharon Tate. So I think that's a fascinating little element. And I honestly believe that Manson, although he spouted, propagandized the Beatles lyrics, told him to do this, the real reason was this guy, Bobby Beausoleil, who's still in jail today for the murder of Gary Hinman, a musician in Topanga Canyon. He's still in jail, still trying to get out on parole. So the real reason why Manson sent his minions to kill was to get his pal Bobby Beausoleil set free. And that's an interesting element that many people may not know about.
Right. Well, let's go from true crime to romance with Clyve Rose. That's a real zoom over. And you have written a number of Regency romance books.
Yes.
What do you find in the Regency period that you feel you include in your books that might open people's eyes to something that was really happening in that time period?
There was a lot happening in that time period, but I think one of the reasons romance is such a successful genre and that people have been reading romance novels pretty much since that was the Regency era was when the novel began, or a little bit before. Jane Austen is obviously very well known, and people can't get enough of her work, whether there's a TV series or a movie or the books themselves or the reprints or the fanfic or the sequels that people write. And that's, I think, because the way people relate to each other, the interaction between human beings doesn't really change. People still get tongue-tied around someone they have a crush on, whether they're a high school kid in 2022 or a Regency person 220 years ago. So I always think that's very interesting. The reason that those kind of stories still resonate is because people still have that problem. They still can't talk to someone they like. They still can't look someone in the eye and say, I really, really like you. It's very difficult to do. You see people do it in movies, and the reason we like to watch it in movies is because it doesn't happen very often in real life. It takes real courage. So I'm constantly fascinated by the fact that hasn't changed.
Mm-hmm. Do you think something like Bridgerton, the Netflix series, has revived a love for this period? I know the new season just launched here in the U.S.
I know it dropped here. I had to wait an extra day because the 25th to America is the 26th here. I binge watched the whole thing yesterday. I watched the whole. I won't spoil anything for anybody. I haven't read the books though. I will say that I saw a lot of Shakespeare in this one in terms of influence. Yes, I think it has. And I think that era of honor and decency and calling people out and taking huge offense at people who are duplicitous and not presenting themselves as they are. There's lots of ironies in there. There's lots of contradictions, but I think there's something beautiful about it. And I do think you need a good 2 centuries of distance before you can romanticize any specific period. There were a lot of things going on historically at the time that were not remotely beautiful, including a lot of wars, and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think it does bring it back in terms of popularity. I get a lot more requests to appear and to write for publications and to appear on panels and whatnot since Bridgerton's been made into a Netflix series. So I can only be grateful to Julia Quinn and Shondaland for that. Thank you. But particularly as my books try to take a slightly different take. So look for the people that haven't been told about for 200 years. So
yeah. Okay, thank you. Now, Harrison, you do thrillers. And that's another popular genre also. Mystery and thrillers are really big right now. And your title, which I thought was very interesting, because it's like those who hunt wolves. I mean, that could be about almost anything. Can you tell us sort of, give us a peek inside what yours is about?
Yeah, so thank you for having me. So Those Who Hunt Wolves, it's an action techno thriller that follows these 2 secret agents, Shepard and Graham. They work for this organization known as 7721, and the organization shoots them down, leaves them for dead, and they survive. And they exact revenge on this secret covert organization by stealing a very dangerous weapon from them called the Blackout. And, you know, the thing about thrillers that's always intrigued me is that thrillers can go really in any direction. You can do a techno thriller where you're jet setting through the world and you're seeing things that you've never even thought maybe existed in my novel, or you can do thrillers where, you know, it's folks, a murder in a small town. You know, there's so much variety that you can choose when it comes to the thriller genre, and there's something for everyone, in other words.
Mhm. So, in your book, what can you give us a little hint? Because I wanted to know what the wolves were about. What do you mean by that?
Absolutely. So the wolves are essentially these super soldiers who are genetically enhanced, who their whole job is to protect the head of this covert organization of 7721. And these two guys, Shepard and Graham, they're not wolves, but they want to exact revenge on 7721 and the wolves who left them for dead. So that's how the name Those Who Hunt Wolves came about.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. So, if you were going to try and compare, um, what would be other comparative title or author that people might be aware of that were looking for a techno thriller?
So any Tom Clancy novel would be
Mhm.
pretty consistent with this storyline. Anyone who's a fan of the Jack Reacher novels would also enjoy this as well. Um, there's a series called Jet. I'm not sure if a lot of folks know about this thriller. Jet's a female super spy who if you're a fan of that series, you would enjoy it too. So anyone who's into those action thrillers would love this book.
Now, is it going to be a series?
Yes, it is, and I'm working on the next book as we speak. So
Excellent. Very good.
thank you.
Okay, and let's go to Adanna. Adanna Moriarty, your book, Threadbare, is a collection of poetry. So tell us
It is.
about it because it's more around a theme.
Yeah, so it's a memoir in poetry. It started, it was kind of a journey when my dad got sick and eventually passed away in a very short period of time. And I was looking for a way to process that. And I've always written poetry, and it was going to be a chapbook. And then I decided I didn't want a book that was just about my dad dying. And so it kind of became this exploration of who I was before, during, and after him being in the hospital and passing away. So it starts when I'm a little kid, and it brings us all the way to, well, basically today. I mean, 2020, because that's when the book was finished. But yeah, and it came out in January. I don't know, it's exciting. Poetry is, I think, really undervalued in the reading world, because most poetry is looked at as complicated and hard to understand. And so my poetry is actually pretty accessible. It's not it's not a lot of form. It's not a lot of big words that we don't really use today. So I don't know. That was my goal, was to make it resonate and as accessible as possible to people who were going through all kinds of stages in life.
Yeah, well, what I liked about your book was that it's a memoir, really. It just happens to be written in poetry.
Yeah, it's definitely a memoir, which is how I explain it to people. And it was one of the things that my publisher liked about it, because a lot of times, poetry collections might be written around a theme, but they don't tell a story from page one to the last page. And this does. This has a story, and it just sort of follows through my life. It's moments of my life in a poem. So each poem is something significant to me.
Right. And you
Some
were
of
part
it
of
is,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh, some of it is also, internal struggle. So there's it deals with depression and body image and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, very good. Okay, and then let's go on to David, because now yours is children's. So we have, 5 completely different genres here. So tell us about your books.
Well, thanks for having me on the show. Well, my books are, as you said it's a children's adventure series. I have written 4 books, or 4 stories so far, and they're basically they're just kids' adventure stories based on some of the characters that are actually based on real life, based on my youth, and part of it is the the storyline is that we have these 2 best friends who are detectives, like kids detectives. So it's not a very new idea, but I hope I made some nice and interesting and fun stories.
Okay, so they go on different adventures, right?
They go on different adventures. Basically, they are like kids detectives for hire, and they kind of get themselves into difficult situations, and they need to be able to get themselves out. The whole story behind these books is that I'm a father of twin boys, which who are now 7 years old. And a couple of years ago, I became basically a stay-at-home dad. And during this time, I kind of relived my youth and the love for reading such stories. And I think this is where the whole idea for writing these stories came from, because I wanted to be able to tell my boys some stories that are my own. So yeah, this is the so far I've been successful. The boys really love them, so I'm planning on continuing with them.
So when you're doing it for the boys, that's an interesting way to start to pass along stories about your life. But then you sort of went off down a little different trail with the stories, making them these detectives for hire.
Well, yes. I mean, the inspiration came from some of the stories and some of the adventures that I had as a kid, and from there, of course, it kind of grew and became this like non-specific fictional world.
Mhm.
So yeah, but the original inspiration definitely lies in my own childhood, my own mischievous youth.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Croatia, actually, so that's another part of the whole idea behind trying to bring some of my upbringing and the difference in the cultural difference or whatever it may be for my boys and for all the other readers. In fact, so.
All right. Now, one of the things that I think when I go into a bookstore, or if I'm on, Amazon or Barnes and Noble online, one of the things that catches me is the cover of a book, because that's the first thing, and then the title. But it's that look of the book. So why don't we go around, if everybody can just hold up their cover? Okay, you have a cover of a book nearby. Okay, yeah, so we can see it, sort of zoom it in on the camera a little.
I actually have all 4 of them here, so I don't know which one. Should I
Yeah, just take the latest one. Take the latest one.
I'll take the latest. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and then just hold them up. Okay, so let's look at those. All right, so we've got, all right, Ivar the other direction. Yeah. Yes, so those are very striking covers. They all have something. They definitely say, like, of course, for Clive, that's definitely a romance with that nice, beautiful script. And Adanna's is sort of script there with the poetry. Those Who Hunt Wolves, pretty much, boom, right on the head. That looks like a thriller. And Ivar's, oh my God, with Manson's eyes, you can't forget those. And then here you have the little boys right there in the middle of their adventure. So they catch and grab your attention when you walk in. So I'm thinking, thank you for showing those. That's like, I think, an important thing. Do most of you, some of you who have publishers don't let you have much input on the cover. Yeah, that Clive, that's probably what you have. But
that's okay. They did a lovely job of that one. I really love that cover.
I think that's a beautiful cover. Harrison, did your publisher put that cover together for you?
So it's funny. I had a lot of say over this cover, which from I'm very new to this literary world, and I was told forget it. Once you get on, forget about picking your cover. But I was very much in the process.
I like the spiral type of look going on behind the type.
That definitely wasn't my idea. I mean, they asked me what I wanted, but everything else was them. So,
but that's what they do. It's kind of a science, to putting together the cover, the font, the style, the colors, all of that. With your book, Ivor, that's kind of a famous picture of Manson, isn't it?
Yes, it's a famous picture from when he was arrested in Ventura, California, and it was such a gripping. And the eyes, as you pointed out, were there. And I basically played with it a few times and sent it to the guy who did my Beatle book and asked him to play with it. But the good thing, I mean, the interesting point that all of you are mentioning is that when you self-publish, which I have with this book, I am the person who decides what's going to go on the cover. And I think every author views their book each way. And while I've got your attention, when you finish going through the cover thing, what fascinates me, if you don't mind me asking, Kathleen, and I'm inclined to ask even though you don't let me, is basically you can have written the greatest book on the face of the earth, but if nobody knows about it, forget it. So I would like to know, if we have time, and I know you've got readers out there who probably not that interested, but how do you get such a diverse topic of each of you've done out to the public? I mean, do you hit libraries? Do you go onto talk shows? Do you go podcasts? That kind of question. So I'm sorry to take it off the path that you wanted on, Kathleen, but back to you.
Yeah, you always have a question to ask. The reporter in you never dies. That's easy. Well, David, your covers also. Now, that one you were showed, they looked like they were on a piece of ice or something.
Yes, that is correct. That is a part of the adventure. They find themselves at one point floating around on a sheet of ice on a very cold winter's day. So it's actually part of the story. All of my covers actually depict like a specific let's call it a specific scene from the books. Yeah. So that was the idea behind these covers, and I do them myself. I am a self-published author as well. So these covers are all basically my ideas, and of course, I'm not an illustrator, so I have to get other professionals to do that part. But the ideas are mine.
Right. And then Adanna, your cover, Threadbare, with all of it looks like yarn in the background or something. How did that come about?
Well, so I mean, the theme kind of throughout my book, my poetry, is nature and the fabric that binds us together. So I have a publisher, but I actually came to my publisher with the cover already done. And when I was working with my designer, I told her I wanted it kind of moody. I wanted it, to feel cozy, but also feel like maybe you were in the woods. And that's what she put together for me. And I mean, I asked my publisher if they wanted to change anything, and they said no. So
Oh, they didn't have to have anybody do it. That sped things up.
yeah, I mean, I came to her with the interior layout done too. So you know, they didn't my house didn't have to do a whole lot of work on my book.
Yeah, that works for you. Now, all of you, except for, well, Adanna and Ivor, the other three of you do sort of series characters. Do you have, now Harrison has just got one book, so he's probably going to be keeping those two men. Clive, are you working on a new series?
I am, yes. I am determined to marry mystery. I launched a novella that hit bestseller status last year, and it's the first in a series of 5. I've written the second one. I've got 3 more to go. So yeah, I'm determined to marry historical with mystery and romance. Put it all together.
Historical mystery romance.
Yes.
Well, that sounds like a lot of research.
Well, a lot of the research is already done. I reuse my research all the time, but it's interesting. There was a lot going on politically in the UK it wasn't that united, to be honest. I should just call it England. In that time period, and there's a lot of story there, a lot of unmentioned things. I imagine I'll get a good 5 or 6 works out of the same research that I'm doing. So there's a lot there.
Okay. And David Konrad, are you going to be continuing with these 2 boys and their adventures?
Yes, and well, in fact, there are only 2 boys in book 1. Then in book 2, they're joined by this girl called Lisa, and so she adds to this dynamic between the 2 as well. So we may also call it, like, this would have been children's mystery romance. But yeah, definitely the characters are going to stay, and it's pretty much an open-ended, like an episodic series. So I'm not entirely sure how far I'll take it, but there will be more books to this series. In fact, I'm finishing book 5 as we speak. Hopefully, it should be published maybe within a month or so. So I'm quite excited.
Great. And then Harrison, are your 2? Well, they're not really spies, are they? Are your 2 men going to be the same ones going through your series?
Yeah, most definitely. There's a little bit of there's a significant twist at the end of the story that I can't share, but they will be in the second book.
Mm-hmm. So are they the primary characters going through, like Reacher is the same character going through all of those novels?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
And do you have them traveling all over the world, or is it more in a specific area?
No, this is an international thriller, so they're traveling all over the world. The thought process that I had when writing this, I'm a big fan of fantasy, and so I kind of merged that thought process of having a thriller of places that don't exist, but you can almost think to yourself, wow, that may exist in our world, that kind of thought process. So they're going to definitely they're definitely going to be traveling to different places. Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask all of you something, because today's session on BookFest is for readers. What books are each of you reading? Because I know writers usually also are very big readers. And I don't know if you read in your topic or if you read something totally different. Let's start with David.
I know what I'm going to be reading soon, so that's going to be Harrison's book. Definitely.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean that's my kind of a book. I mean, I am a huge Jack Reacher fan, and those type of books, and definitely, and actually I like James Rollins as well, which might be something along the lines. It's also like tech thrillers, mysteries. So this is definitely my genre. Definitely the genre that I like to read the most.
Oh, that's fabulous to hear. Clive, what are you reading?
I am currently reading a romance for review that someone sent me called Into the Underwood. I have read Harrison's book because I love reading that. I'm a huge fan of that genre. So I recommend it.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
I love mysteries and I love thrillers. And yeah, I've always wanted to try mystery, so I'm having a bit of a go. Like I said, I released one novella last year. It did really well, so now I'm continuing on. I also I don't read in my specific subgenre when I'm writing in it because I'm an unconscious style mimic, and I don't always notice when I'm thinking it up or remembering it, and then I have to go back and pull it out and redo it. So I just don't. So if I'm writing, which is most of the time at the moment, I read, like for example, at the moment I'm reading modern detective novels because I like those, and that way I'm not likely to run across anything that will bleed into my own work. So yeah.
All right. So now you have two readers, Harrison. What are you reading?
So oddly enough, I'm not reading any thrillers right now. I'm a little bit ADHD when it comes to my reading. So I'm reading 3 novels right now in rotation. So there's one novel I'm reading by, forgive me, I say his name messed up all the time, Chuck Palahniuk. It's A Beautiful Monster. This is the same author who did Fight Club and Choke. And it's a really twisted tale about this model who loses her face in a car accident and kind of how her life spirals downward. And then I'm reading another novel called Pimp, which was written back in the 60s, and it's kind of a fictional autobiography about this pimp back in the early 60s. And then I'm reading a graphic novel right now about the Incredible Hulk.
Well, that's a variety. Excuse me. Adanna, what are you picking up and reading?
Okay, so I am also ADHD, just generally in everything. So I am reading for fun a book that was just put out by my publisher that's called The Last Man in Cleveland. It is an apocalyptic story that was started 6 years ago before our current situations, but weirdly has the same theme. It's really good, and it's written sort of in the Lemony Snicket style, so it's like heavy material but funny. And then I'm reading an advanced reader copy of a poetry collection that comes out later this year. And then I'm reading 2 books for work.
Yeah, Adanna does book publicity also, so books for work. Ivor, what have you got on your table stack?
Well, the interesting thing is I'm in the middle of my next book, which is about my adventures in Hollywood with a lot of the famous people. So to be, as I think Adanna mentioned, you read books that help you in your next writing. So I must say I'm a dull boy because I've been reading books about Muhammad Ali and Cary Grant, some background stuff to Elvis Presley, Vivian Leigh, the famous actress, Mickey Rourke, Peter Sellers. I'm reading books for research. And when I need to get away, I like a Jean Le Carré book. I'm a spy man. And John Le Carré is coming out with a new book later this year. He's dead now, of course. He's coming out with a new book, his letters over the years to famous people. So that's my pleasure reading. The other books about the movie stars and the celebrities and all those characters is hard work. At least that's my story. I'm going to stick to it.
Okay. All right. So when you look around at all of the different kinds of books out there, do you find how many of you read outside of other genres, or do you always just pick the same genre to read in? Clive?
I'm very eclectic. I just find something that takes my fancy and I read it. I don't read, I devour, I inhale books. So, if I'm into it, I'll read it, and then I'll reread it, and then I'll flip to my favorite bits. By the time I've gone through a book, I can quote it back at you. It takes me a while, but I do. So I sort of linger over everything that I'm into. So, but everything. I don't have a particular genre. I've actually written a graphic novel. It's in art at the moment, being drawn. So yeah, and my daughter is very much into anything with a strong female protagonist. So we've moved from Wonder Woman to Harley Quinn. A bit worried about that trajectory, but all of that. We do all of that. She's on chapter graphic novels now, and I read those too because I like to know what she's reading to make sure it's not too graphic. So everything really. I do, for pure escapism, I'll read a contemporary romance because I can do that in a couple of hours. I'm pretty quick, and I always admire writers who can write in a way I can't, and I find that very challenging to do modern things. So, same as when I read gangster novels, and I don't understand any of the gun stuff. It's not a big thing for me. I know how to use a gun in the 1800s. It didn't do a lot. One shot, you're done. But all of the modern weapons and the tech stuff, it's interesting for me as a reader. I can escape straight into it. So
Yeah.
But I read very widely. I don't have a specific genre.
Yeah. Adanna, is there, if you weren't reading books for work, what would be your favorite genre to read?
So I have two really specific genres that are my favorite. One is historical fiction, and the other is anything that is dystopian, apocalyptic, end of the world, or post end of the world survival. But I don't force and I guess poetry. I don't force myself into that. I mean, I also, if I'm looking for something easy, I will read romance. I like kind of like paranormal, witchy, like romance kind of stuff too. But that's like if I'm just looking for total escapism, something easy to read. But yeah, I have the same problem that Clive does, which is I'm a little bit of a unconscious style mimic. So if I'm writing something, I have to be really conscious of what I'm reading, because if I'm reading in the same genre, you're not getting like my writing.
Does anybody else here find that they just like to read a book to escape for a weekend? I like to find, I work intensely. I do lots of stuff. I'm very busy. And then sometimes I give myself a weekend and I pick up a book and then just read all weekend. I have a place I made out in my backyard to just sit in the shade and read. And then when it gets dark, I come inside and I keep reading. And sometime on Sunday, I'm done. But does anybody else do that?
I do that. Yeah, I do that big time.
I do that. I'll just live in the book. I'll ignore the housework and stuff and go, no, I'm going to wherever this takes me. Not here.
Yeah, do you do that?
I try my best to. I have a hammock. I have really bad allergies, so outside is kind of like out of the question for me, unfortunately. But I have a hammock inside, and it's right now surrounded by books, comic books, graphic novels that I just piled up that I'm trying to read. I feel like every weekend for the past 2 months now, something has come up where I have not been able to do that. But when I get the chance to do that, it's fantastic.
Yeah. What about you, David?
Well, I used to, but then kids happen. So, but lately I've been. We live in Germany, so lately I've been reading a lot of first grade homework in German. So that's also to add to the mix.
Yeah. Oh, that sort of mixes it up. That's definitely mixing it up. What about you, Ivar? Do you ever just escape in a book?
All work and no play makes Ivor a dull boy. So what I'm saying is I basically look at books for research, which is a bad thing, except for the John le Carré stuff. The problem in life today, and I don't want to get too philosophical, is that we are all, my books, maybe one will become a documentary, so I end up streaming documentaries on Netflix, which doesn't answer your question. But I do read a book from time to time. And the other day, my 13-year-old grandson was asking me about Churchill. He was reading books about Churchill. And then he asked me something and I didn't know the answer. So I started looking at Churchillian books, and there are scores of them out there. So that was my pleasure to do it. But as I say, my confession is that unfortunately, I've got 75 books scattered around in my house, and they're all 90% of them are tied up in the work I'm doing, which is get real, Ivor. Come on. Sorry about that.
Yeah, well, my favorite vacation is I go to the store on Saturday morning and get a fresh baguette and some cheese and an extra bottle of wine. And that's my weekend reading. I don't have to cook. I don't have to do anything. I'll have that. And I think people should really try to pick up something different and just devour it. Don't you?
I agree. That's how I like to read. I don't have a bathtub where I live at the moment, but I used to read in the bath, even when I was really busy. Like it might be 11 p.m. at night by the time I clock off, and I'm like, that's fine. I'll have a quick bath and read.
Then you have a sopping wet book there, then don't you?
I'm very careful.
No big bubbles coming up over the cover.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that if you were all, let's just make it a real fast. We'll start with Harrison and go to Adanna, so what's on the screen. What piece of advice would you give readers in looking for a new book?
I would recommend you find something that captures your eye instantly. If it captures your eye, just read it. Because a lot of times when you have that gut feeling about something is good, you typically enjoy it. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay, that's a good one. Adanna?
I would say walk down a different aisle in your bookstore than you normally go right to. And just run your hand down the books and grab one and read the back cover and, go from there.
That's a good way to try and find one. Ivor, what do you think?
By the way, I just want to add a quick line to one of the questions you asked earlier. I read somewhere that readers going through bookstores fix on a book cover for less than 3 seconds. So you better have a good book cover. What I do is I read the New Yorker, and the New Yorker has a wonderful section in its book section when it gives you 6 to 8 new books and gives you a pocket review of the book. And I find that if I read that, there's always one book that intrigues me. So check out the book reviewers, see what they have to say. And if it rings a bell with you, answer the bell.
Good. Clive?
I'm with Harrison on this one. Trust your gut. Just, if I'm looking for something to read, I'll just see what grabs me. And it might be the cover. It might be the title. It'll be a new experience because I've not been there before. I'm the same when I pick a place to go. I'm like, where haven't I been before? I'll go there. How bad can it be? I've never been there before. So if nothing else, it's a new experience. So it's always worth it. I think there's only one time in my life I didn't finish a book, and that was a set text for high school.
Okay, and David?
I actually like to ask my friends, people that I find interesting, and that I like to know what they read and what they like to read, and I like to get their recommendations. I mean, that's usually how I get exposed to something new and different.
Yeah, I think it really helps. I have a group of people, we all sort of pass books around, and one of us will find one and we think, oh, hey, this is really great. And then, you buy it and it's like, it's really good and you really like it. And then it starts making it around, you get it back 6 months later, but, 5 people have read the book, and you can talk about it with somebody. I like sharing what I've learned in books with people, except the escapism. That's usually just a mental vacation. But, if their books are topical or there's some historical facts in there that you really want to, is that really true? Did you happen? Or it takes place where someone has lived. I always find that really interesting and a way to keep it all moving along. And, it just makes for a fun story to share something. There's something about, and I think, sharing and getting together. That's why book clubs are so endlessly popular, because you can read one book and share it with, the 5 or 6 people in your group. And it's a sort of a support to the community. You have this little community of people that like sort of the similar things. Sometimes somebody suggests a book that other people don't like. I actually blew up a book club one time. This was back in the 80s when I suggested Interview with a Vampire. And some of the people thought that was just not to their intellectual liking. But the other people who read it actually enjoyed it. So you never know, to go get out of your comfort zone. It might be a really good place for you to be and to find new books. And we have these 5 authors, all with really interesting titles, it sounds like, completely different ways of looking at books. And I want to thank each of you, Harrison Taylor, Adanna Moriarty, Ivor Davis, Clyve Rose, and David Konrad, for being with us on BookFest today. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.